Basement level vibes with another one, straight up blackness. Aye. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, we have to gather wrong, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention. Education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Benskop upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and on the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal him. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my
This is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, good evening. It's 4 minutes after 9 o'clock. Let's rock and roll. We have no time to waste. We're not going to bounce here or bounce there. We're going to bounce right here with you. This is our parliament. And let's get ready to talk some serious business right here on 107.1 FM. Let me just take the time to say hello to all of you, every single one of you. I'm not going to call your names. I don't want anybody to get upset. So, because if I call June Beresford's name, people are going to get upset. If I call Selecta Mark, whoever Selecta Mark is. But, and Anne Elizabeth Kitt, hi, how are you guys? Shondell Griffith, every single one of you. Sukla Rodika Siklal, and all the other folks, Sherry Rowe from French Guyana. How are you guys doing? People from around the world. We can't forget Sparkling Wills. Hi, Nadira Sukraj also. And we can't forget Ann John. All of you guys right here watching 107.1 FM. Keith Beresford, how are you? Garfield Collins. Somebody said that Garfield Collins celebrated his birth anniversary the other day. And while we don't send out birthday greetings unless it's really, really special folks, people like myself, people like Wayne Caesar, people like Keith Beresford and Elizabeth Kitt and Selecta Mark, unless it's our birthday or golly God, we don't usually say happy birthday to people, but we will make an exception this evening and say belated birthday greetings to Garfield Collins. He's right there in the audience. Just tell him whatever, say hi, hey, what's going on, Garfield Collins? I know you guys love to chit-chat amongst each other. But again, if any one of you out there celebrating your birth anniversary, on behalf of all of us here at 107.1 FM, happy birthday to all of you. I know that the General Secretary of the People's Progressive, sorry about that. That's got to be a wicked laugh, right? But the General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, the Honorable Dawn Hastings Williams, she celebrated her birth anniversary just the other day, and we just actually forgot. We forgot that. She deserves that. So happy birthday to the Honorable General Secretary of the People's National Congress. Dylan Carew, how are you doing? One of these days, we've got to ask our what is it? Borrow reporter. Borrow, that is not borrowed, but Wayne Caesar. Wayne Caesar is all over in Brooklyn, wherever it is. We'll have him go up all the way to Connecticut and go live from Dylan Carew boxing gym, or even what is it out here in Brooklyn. We also have Wayne Big Truck Braffett. Good evening to Wayne Big Truck Braffett. But this evening we have attorney at law Darren Wade with us. We also have Dr. David Hines. He is with us as well. Forbes Meadows, good evening to you. And Waveney Doris, Sister Hadesh, all of you. Elroy Lancaster, good evening to you, sir. Elroy's birth anniversary is August 17th. August 17th. And look, why not give Elroy a really good big up? And I do really mean it, because when you listen to this song, Elroy Lancaster is right there in the audience with us. You may have a song, you may have something you want to do. You want him to make a commercial for you, whatever it is, Elroy is the guy. Guess why? This is his job.
Basement level vibes with another one, straight up blackness. Who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating every.
All right, that's the guy. He's on the screen, Elroy Lancaster. You've got to reach out to him. You've got to say thank you. He did a great job with that. And let's get ready to rock and roll. And 107.1 FM, Shellon Washington, attorney at law. Don't forget, if you need a malpractice, a malpractice attorney, personal injuries, divorce, landlord and tenant. If you're being evicted and your landlord is being silly, call Shellon Washington's law firm. If your tenant is just doesn't want to go, call Shellon Washington. If you have any medical malpractice, whatever, call Shellon Washington. Just call Shellon Washington. If things aren't going how they're supposed to be going and you just want to, well, call divorce, sorry, but call Shellon Washington. And for those of you also out there in Brooklyn, anytime you're feeling hungry, just go down to Linda's Restaurant and Bakery in Brooklyn. It's on Church Avenue, 5322 Church Avenue. Go out and support these businesses, 100% Guyanese owned. They have, Clive Fraser. Clive Fraser is looking for barbers. He's looking for beauticians. Just give him a call. The numbers right there on the screen, or the numbers are right there on the screen. He is the owner of Exquisite Hair Palace. Exquisite Hair Palace on Church Avenue, 5321. You can't miss it. And then the leader of the opposition, the leader of the opposition, Aubrey Norton, is going to be in New York, and they will have this big event at, or one of them, many big events they do have, but this is the Vision for Guyana and the New York People's National Congress Reform present an evening with Aubrey Norton. And that's a Tropical Breeze Ballroom, wherever. I think it's in Brooklyn, starting time at 5 p.m. And that's going to be If you can let me know what the, sorry about that. We've got to get a date for you guys. Um, yeah, I'm getting a little trying to. Okay, there we go. September 1st. So you can't miss it. You give them a couple of plugs there. And I do believe that there is a public meeting also in Queens. We will give you the exact date for that. It's going to be in Queens. So all of you guys are invited to go out there and listen, see what's going on. All right. Good evening to all of you, every single one of you again. My name is Mark Benchop. We're going to rock and roll. I notice our regular bad girl, so to speak, on this program, GT, Root Girl, and all the other people here. Good evening to all of you. Carl Miller. Hi, Carl, Brenda, Billy, good day or good evening. Barbara Barrington, all of you. And now the list is way too long for me to just go through it, but let me just say hi to all of you. Dr. David Hines is going to be with us in just about 5 minutes or so. And Darren Wade is also going to be with us. And this entire month, as we celebrate the Black History Month in Guyana, African Guyanese History Month, Kojo McPherson, of course, there are lots of others, but Kojo McPherson, the pioneer of the village movement in Guyana, we continue to salute this great son of the soil, Kojo McPherson, an enslaved individual, but brilliant, far more brilliant than most or all of the enslavers, those brutal masses back in those times. Speaking of brutal masses, reparation, I've noticed that Irfan Ali is now talking about he is in favor of that. The only reason that he's in favor of that, not because he's so concerned or he wants the best for persons of African descent. And I say this without any apologies because many of you know that as soon as he got installed, over 3,000 or 4,000 persons of African descent from the civil service, they were, or the civil servants, sorry, they were terminated. Their work was actually terminated by this guy. He sent them packing. They have no jobs. They have absolutely nothing. And we see how they discriminate against persons of African descent, mostly. I know there are quite a lot of our Indian brothers and sisters as well who are being discriminated, our indigenous brothers and sisters as well, who are being discriminated as a result of their political affiliation. And that's exactly what it is about. Exactly what it is about. And so just to listen to this guy talk about reparation and all these things, he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. Shame on this vagabond. Shame on him. Imagine weeks it took before they finally got all of the mayors and deputy mayors sworn in. Finally. Okay? So this guy doesn't mean any good. He doesn't mean any proper business for Guyana. He goes around the world like a beggar with a begging basket, and they beg and they beg and they beg because they have no proper plans for Guyana. Absolutely no proper plans for the country. Just imagine an oil-rich country, billions upon billions of dollars, and you have somebody who is an installed president, is going around the world, going to China, going to other places with a begging basket, begging and taking loans. How does that work? Somebody do the math, right? That you get billions of dollars in oil wealth. We're not talking about the gold. We're not talking about bauxite. We're talking just about the oil, billions of dollars. And then you have these guys from Exxon and other people, they're enjoying it. And so their kids are enjoying it, their grandkids are enjoying it, but not the people in Blackbush Polder, not Savitri, not Gopal, and not Beverly, not Waveney out there in Blackbush Polder, at Alnis Village, at Philippi, wherever. They're not the ones enjoying anything. The people at Brighton Village not enjoying anything. Go there and you ask them. The people at number 35 Village, Tarlaji, you ask them. Go to Epsom, go to Evesham, go to Bengal, go to those places, go as we say on the quarantine top side. You ask them if they're benefiting from the oil. And the answer is no. The only thing that they can say yes to, that they're benefiting from as a result of hard work and labor on their part, as they have to go to the back dams and so forth and pick coconuts and make sure that they make, coconut oil. That's the only thing they're benefiting from. But the actual oil of the country, the oil wealth, the reserves, and they're not benefiting anything. The majority of the wealth is being shipped out of Guyana. And when you see all these airlines going to back and forth to Guyana, and all of these folks who suddenly love Guyana, and they don't love Guyana. They love the wealth because they're becoming filthy rich. They're rich, the Chachi rich, the Chacha rich, and talking about the Caucasians and so forth and so on, right? I think you understand. But these are the people who are getting richer and richer and richer and richer. And every single day, while some of you fly in American Airlines or whatever it is, y'all got to go all the way to the back next to the toilet or somewhere. Well, it doesn't matter where I sit in a plane, because I'm not a first class kind of guy. I don't like them kind of business class seats and stuff. I like go around in pit, as I call it. But that is just how it is. Everything you got to pay for. If they go on a vacation, you pay for it. If they go and buy a toilet paper, you pay for it. If they got to fly their families into Guyana for one day or just a weekend, you pay for it. Yeah, every one of you pay for it. But go to Linden and see how the market is. There's no money to fix the market. There's no money to fix the bridge. There's no money to give to the people. There's no money in terms of civil servants, an increase in their salaries. There's no money to give the police an increase in their salaries. There's no money to give to the teachers and all of these people. No monies. There's no money to ensure that there's a free, as it was under the PNC, free education from nursery to university. There's no money for that, none whatsoever. But what these vagabonds do is they steal your money, whatever little crumbs they get from the oil. They take your crumbs and they split it up to their friends and families and their concubines. Speaking of concubines, good evening to the installed Minister of Natural Resources. Good. And so, having said that, there's really nothing these guys have. No plan, no nothing. Well, I have some questions for David Hines and Darren Wade. They're probably putting on their makeup, but we are awaiting their arrival. We have the red carpet. We have everything waiting for them to arrive. Good evening. And I'm just looking in the comments section now. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us. And also for those of you who every night you take the time to share the link. We appreciate that. Our operators indicated to us that Wayne Caesar is going to be with us as well this evening. Wayne is becoming a permanent fixture along with our attorney at law, Shalon Washington. Shalon Washington should be with us tomorrow or Friday night right here on 107.1 FM. And it's so good to know that these people are sticking with us, and these are people who are committed. These are patriots, and we love patriots. They're here to talk and to ensure that the message gets out of there. It's nothing but a little chip or a little ego or these sort of things. They do whatever that they have to do. And if you don't see someone on this show, it means they're no longer on this show. Thank you so much, Carl Miller. And as we look at the time, 19 minutes after 9 o'clock, we have serious business to take care of. And so let me just welcome all of you. Our operator has indicated to me that Dr. David Hines is with us. I noticed that Dr. Hines has on a red shirt. We're not going to accept him tonight on this show with a red shirt. Oh, no, he swiftly went and he changed that shirt. Dr. Hines, what's going on? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mark. Long time. When I'm in Guyana, I get so busy that I forget my friends.
Well, not only that, it means something that you probably getting some of that oil money, that oil wealth. Because every time you go to Guyana, you look different. It's not like I'm sitting here admiring you, mind you. Don't get all carried away, because I saw your eyes glow like, wow, Mark is admiring me. But Dr. Hines, really good to see you. How have you been, sir?
Well, it's good to be. We've been home over the last 3 months, and soaking up Guyana, doing what I've always done, and keeping up, meeting people, talking to people, and getting an updated feel of our country.
I'm so glad that you're there, because a lot of people, I've noticed the Buxtonians are already jumping on me. Like, I can't make a joke with David Hines as though all of them jumping on me. Let me just apologize right away. Right away. I see the the Booker and all these people are always on my case, Dr. Hines. What's going on? What have you done to those Buxtonians, man? But, Dr. Hines, I oftentimes hear this silly talk that people can't go to Guyana because you speak up your mind. You can't go back by, or you can't go. Look, we have been in Guyana there during the rough days and the rough years and the rough times. What message do you have for some of these foolish people who oftentimes like to say, oh, this body can't go back to Guyana and that body can't go back to Guyana? Talk a little bit about that as we begin this program this evening with you, Dr. Hines.
Well, there are two things. First of all, we seem to fall victim to the fear factor that if you speak up, the government will do you this and the government will do you that. I mean, governments always try to scare off people who speak up. And often people buy into it. And so therefore they censor themselves. So the fear factor really is what is driving that, especially among our people. For those who are supporters of the government, they use it as a means of saying, look, we are big and bad and, you can't come to your own country and all of that nonsense. So it's the fear factor on the one hand, and on the other hand, the bully factor. But there's another element to this. One doesn't need to go to Guyana these days in the age of technology to really contribute effectively to what's going on in Guyana. That's where technology has taken us. So one can be any part of the world and make a difference to what's happening in Guyana. And, some of us have to fight on some front, but we have to fight on all fronts. I will have to leave Guyana shortly to go back to North America to earn my daily bread, right? I can't earn a daily bread in Guyana. I go back to earn my daily bread, but that doesn't stop what I am doing here on the ground. And so one should not allow this thing about you can't go back to Guyana, you're frightened to go back to Guyana, and you haven't been back to Guyana in a long time. We should not be deterred by that. The fact that one may be living outside of Guyana and making those in power in Guyana not sleep well at night, it really says a lot.
It says a lot indeed. Dr. David Hines, our guest, he hasn't been around on us on this side, but he has been busy on the other side, his side, almost every single day. And, we've got to salute Dr. David Hines for what he does. He doesn't get paid. A lot of people think we get paid for this, Look, I got this tie. I borrowed it from my son just to be on here. And I know you borrowed that shirt from Kadaki. I saw Kadaki with that shirt before because people think we usually get paid. We don't, we may try to get a little work here and there now and then. For me, I shovel snow, I babysit. You're a professor. We're not fortunate like this young man here, Darren Wade, attorney at law. Mr. Wade, good evening, sir.
We're not seeing. It's my counselor, and I owe him. I owe him money for services, and he doesn't want to take money from me.
Dr. Hines, you owe practically all the lawyers in Guyana for services, just as I do. They have some lawyers looking for me, right? But some of them got to sleep on it. Good evening, Nigel Hughes, if you're watching.
Yes, Nigel.
I'm not sure if Mr. Darren Wade is ready for us. He seemed to be looking up into the sky, probably listening to one of those reggae songs. Look into my eyes, tell me what you see, something like that. Dr. Hines, you are on the ground right now. Can you give us, talk to us about how the people are feeling right now? What are they talking about this regime, this installed regime? Talk to us about the sentiments, please, sir.
Well, I can give you a sense of opposition supporters. Well, mostly African Guyanese, but not confined to African Guyanese. There are Amerindians and East Indian Guyanese who support the opposition. And I think there are two deep sentiments in the community. One is a sentiment that appreciates the bad-mindedness of this government, the way in which this government is discriminating against, especially citizens of Guyana who do not support them, who did not vote for them. And people have become conscious of that, of the overbearing nature of the government. And they are very, 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 very clear about what this government is up to. I have seen, and I come very often. I got here in May, and before that, I think I was here in March, April. And, one can measure the increase in the level of consciousness of what this government is doing. People are seeing through their attempt to buy votes. They're seeing through their attempt to impose themselves on the society. They're seeing through their attempt to fool people. So there is that. But the other thing that I find simply amazing, it is the reach of these programs that we do here on the evening. I tell you, Mark, I whether it's Mahaica, West Coast Bees, well, Buxton, of course, Georgetown, wherever I've gone on the East Bank, the West Coast, wherever I have gone, people come up to me and say, politics 101. And it amazes me, the reach of these programs. I went to my friend's wife funeral in Mahaica, and I got in there. The church was full. I was there with two other friends, and one lady got up and signaled me to come over. I went over, and she said, "Take my seat." I said, "No, but I can't take a lady's seat, man. I can't do that." She said, "No, please take my seat." And I said, "No, man, I'll stand up." Anyhow, we went at this for about 2 to 3 minutes. Eventually, she said, "I'm giving you my seat because every night at 7 o'clock, you make my day." And then two other ladies sitting next said, "Yes, we have a routine every night. 7 o'clock, you, Dr. Hines, 8 o'clock, Sherrod, 9 o'clock, Mark." And this is in the middle of, I eventually had to take the seat. That lady got up and went outside and stood outside there at the funeral while I sit. I gave that because it's more than anecdotal. It's really the impact that these programs are having on people's lives in that country. And I think that's the good news that I can report. As a result of that, the level of consciousness about politics, about race and ethnicity, about the government, I can feel that in people. At that same Mahaica, Indian Guyanese men were coming over to shake my hand. It's really amazing, which is so different from the feel when you're not on the ground, because the PPP give you the impression, and the trolls give you the impression that Indians hate us and so on and so on. And then you go on the ground, and Indians are coming over to shake my hand and to talk to me. No, I am not even an elected leader. I have not been elected. I don't belong to a big party. And so I'm saying this to say that there are changes that are occurring on the ground. I was in Kingley over the weekend, and I know you covered that. And as I was walking back from the unveiling of the plaque, an young Indian man jumped off a lorry, and I said, "Hey, like this guy coming to beat me." And he came over and he said, sir, I just want to shake your hand. I just want to shake your hand. And I'm glad I'm seeing you in person. And I said, "Where you see me in person?" He said, "Politics 101. Young Indian man, right? And so, Mark, it's remarkable what we do here every night, and how this is helping to build consciousness among our supporters.
Well said, Dr. David Hines with us this evening. You guys are accustomed seeing him on Politics 101. Sorry, he does a great job there. And I'm glad that he has explained to you what is happening on the ground compared to the PPP propaganda. Is that we just lost Darren Wade, attorney at law. I'm not sure what's happening there at his end, but let me apologize to our listeners. And I'm glad that you've explained that, Dr. David Hines. You mentioned that, and we'll await the arrival of Darren Wade again. But you mentioned over the weekend that you were at Kingley to commemorate or to start the Kojo McPherson's Foundation to ensure that the sacrifices made by Mr. McPherson is that it lives on forever, generations upon generations, and the fact that he is said to be the pioneer of the village movement all across Guyana. Tell us a little bit briefly about the event at Rich Kingley over the weekend, and what's the message concerning Kojo McPherson, enslaved African ancestor.
Mark, I'm so glad that you asked me that question, because I tell you something. No group.
Dr. Hines, just stick a quick pin there. Let's just welcome Mr. Wayne Caesars with us this evening. Good evening, Mr. Caesar.
Pleasant good evening to you, Mark, and good evening, Dr. David Hines.
Good evening, Brother Wayne. I'm one of your fans. One of your fans. I think you bring to the program a kind of folksiness that is often missing from these programs, because people like Mark and myself, we are animals. Political animals, I mean, and we tend to really come at things mostly from a political standpoint, and so many times I think you bring that kind of what I call folk intervention to the program here, when you and brother thing from the quarantine, Mark schoolmate.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think what the two of you do is you bring that indigenous folk intervention that makes the program real. So I'm glad to be on talking to you tonight.
Oh yeah, you seem more excited to have Mr. Caesar next to you than he is sitting next to you as well. Shalon Washington, our attorney at law, should have been here, and the other individual that you didn't mention there dropped out of the race out of anger, but it continues here. Dr. Hines, go on, please, as you were just about to talk about Kojo McPherson.
Yeah, look, every group in a society, every group in the world needs something to identify with. That's where the term identity comes from. And the people often identify with what an individual or a group of individuals accomplish. And one of the things about the African Guyanese community is the feeling that we don't have people in our history who have accomplished things that we can identify with, because we have this kind of negative notion, well, our people were slaves, and what is a slave? You know, our people were beaten up, our people were this, and so on and so forth. And, you know, we always have to imitate other people. Why you can't do like the Portuguese people? Why you all can't do like the Indian people? And so on. When people say that, they're actually saying that we have nothing to identify with within the group. And so it is very important that we bring to bear on our present the pioneers of the past. And I say that deliberately, because we often judge the past by the present and not judge the present by the past. And so we have to humanize people like Kojo McPherson, because he was an ordinary person, didn't go to no big university, didn't have no big title, and so therefore he's not deserving of recognition. He's not deserving of being an example. And I think the more we are able to humanize our pioneers and bring them into the present discourse, the more we are helping to give people confidence. Because people gain confidence from their own accomplishments and the identification with accomplishment. So here's a man that buy land, acre upon acre land. And today, you know, we in this modern times, we are losing land. And here was a man who buy plenty land. Today, Mr. McPherson would have been a mega billionaire. You see. And so we have to put people like Kojo McPherson in context and bring them into the present and to speak about the path that they have led and the accommodations that they had to make so that we could be here today. That is, there's a linkage between what we are doing here tonight and what Kojo McPherson did decades ago. And so it was a good feeling to be there in West Belize and to be paying homage to this man, but more than that, to look at people who are his descendants. And you ask yourself the question, without Mr. McPherson, would a Lincoln Lewis be present? Would all those descendants, would they be present? They are proud because they can identify with a pioneer. They can identify with someone who made history, world history, because the acquisition of land by Africans in Guyana was a world event. First of all, it is not replicated in any other part of the African diaspora, from north to south. It is a unique accomplishment to Guyana. Here are people enslaved for 200 and odd years. Immediately as they walk through those gates, they are buying land. They're not just buying land, but they're turning those lands into communities. And then they're turning those communities into civilization. Tremendous accomplishment. It is why C.L.R. James has said that the Caribbean people are the most modern people in the world, in the sense that there would be no global capitalism without African labor, without Caribbean labor. The Caribbean is at the center of the accumulation of wealth of Europe. And then, having broken the yoke of slavery, they are creating their own communities and accumulating their own wealth, which, of course, if that was allowed to flourish, we would be saying a different story today. That is why C.L.R. James, when he tells the story of the Haitian Revolution, he calls it the Black Jacobins, because the Jacobins are the people who created, the white people who created the French Revolution. And he's saying these black people who created a black revolution, a Haitian revolution, just 18, 20 years after the French Revolution, are as much pioneers, as much human beings as the Europeans. And so he lifts the Haitian revolutionaries to be on par with the Jacobins in France, hence the Black Jacobins. And we in Guyana have our 1763 revolution, which happened before the French Revolution, before the American Revolution, before the Haitian Revolution. Some of our historians, borrowing from European historiography, refer to it as a 1763 rebellion. No, it was a revolution. Those people who held on to Berbice for weeks, and in the process of doing that, they showed other Africans, including the Africans in Haiti, that slavery could be beaten. The example of Kofi and Akrebe and others in 1763 were important to what happened in Haiti, what happened in Haiti in 1804. So in that sense, in that age of revolution, we have two revolutions, our 1763 revolution and the 1804 revolution in Haiti, which brings us into the line of people with a spirit, people with souls. Because what slavery set out to do is to say we didn't have spirit, we didn't have souls. And so when you take somebody like a Kojo McPherson, who then becomes a product of beating slavery and showing that the African could do anything that white people could do, even just walking through the gates of slavery just a year or two after.
Well said, Dr. David Hines with us. We have also Darren Wade, attorney at law, Darren Wade, and public accountant Wayne Caesar with us. Let's go straight to Darren. Mr. Wade, good evening. Welcome back to Straight Up. We haven't seen you here for a while. How have you been, sir?
Good evening, Mark, and good evening to the other panelists and to your viewers. Yes, and thank you for having me here. And it has been a while indeed. I am in the struggle, Mark. In the struggle, being steadfast, continue the work of the God Almighty.
We see you there in the struggle, and we salute you for doing what you're doing.
I was there in New York, in the same struggle, doing my work. I was there, United Nations, where I addressed the issues there, the plight of African, Guyanese, and Asian nationals. And you didn't offer me a drink, man. I thought you would have reached out to me and say, hey, buddy, let me reach out.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't hear the last part that you just said. All I heard something that Wayne or Dr. Hines didn't give you a drink, something like that. But in moving on, I know probably what's going through Wayne's mind in terms of the first question. What exactly did you address? What was it that you guys did in front of the United Nations there to address the plight of mainly, we know all Guyanese are going through what they're going through, but what was the purpose of that address to the United Nations, sir?
Well, as you're aware that this is a decade, the International Decade of the People of African Descent. And I was there with the Ipadagy, and I spoke on the issue of transmigration of Africans, in particularly Asian nationals. So the United Nations has recognized discrimination on the part of Asian nationals in the ability to move a human right. And I spoke in relation to the treatment of Asian nationals in Guyana. Haiti being a sister CARICOM country. And it's up, you know, Mark. It's an excellent question at this point in time because the president is there in the Dominican Republic. So the treatments, the Dominican Republic came in with some flagging by many countries also, because of their treatment to Asian nationals. And what Guyana has in common with the Dominican Republic is our poor treatment or poor record for the treatment of people of African descent and the people of Asian nationals. So Efanal is there in the Dominican Republic with his twin. They are alike. So I spoke, you know, and what is important, I felt it was important also to put on record, because the PPP government, they claim that there is a shortage of labor in Guyana without any scientific study. And only Sister Mansa, Comrade Mansa Desir, was addressing this issue in Parliament. No scientific study, they move wild west. There's no plan, there's no structure. in relation to the policy. That is why that's why they're in parliament tonight, and that's why Ashley Singh has to be going to parliament every 2 weeks for more money.
I think you've made a valid point there, and people have been saying this quite often, almost as frequently as possible. Dr. Hines on his show and others, and including right here, we talk about the fact that the PPP, the installed PPP regime, they have no plan, none whatsoever. They just wake up and that's what they do.
Wild West,
Every
correct.
single day we talk about it. They have no
Correct.
plans at all, none whatsoever.
And they address the whole issue of labor in relation to our nurses. Comrade Desir, and I will invite you all, if you haven't listened to our presentation there, to go. It's an excellent presentation. They terminated the program in Linden, the nursing program. So now they're trying to, if they claim that they want to import nurses from Cuba, but we all know where they're heading. We all know where the PPP is heading. So they're going to go to Cuba and then they'll come around. Then you know they're going to Asia, they're going to India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and those countries. That is the plan. So in that context, I addressed the UN and I explained to the United Nations, if they're going to import labor, Asian nationals should be given priority and must be treated fairly.
Well said, Darren Wade, attorney at law, is with us this evening, talking about the plight and his address with other members to the United Nations.
In addition to that, or a response to that.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I have noticed, Mark, and I must congratulate Rick Ford. I didn't see you put out anything about it. This new PPP organization with Kwame McCoy and Onit Waldron, I see my good friend, Miss Clark, picture there. Several persons that was put together to challenge Apartheid. And according to them, they're there because they're a need for credible organization to represent the interests of Black people.
You know, it is. I know at times you do watch the show, but you may have missed it. We started early o'clock firing shots to say that this so-called organization, and we do it all the time. This so-called African organization comprising of people like a Kwame McCoy and these people to represent African people in Guyana.
What are the records?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the records?
So we have been addressing that here, sir. We have been.
Okay. I didn't see. I didn't
Just say that as a lawyer, say that I haven't noticed.
I said that.
Good. Mr. Wayne Caesar, let's hear from you, sir. What's going on? Talk about this so-called new organization, African organization with the likes of a Kwame McCoy to represent Black people in Guyana. Start off with that, sir.
First of all, Mark, let me start off by saying, listen, we have Apartheid that's already in place, okay? And the government did not need to put together any type of organization. But to the extent that they felt that they needed to put together an organization, they should first start picking people from the opposition first to build out that organization. We don't want to see no organization that is put together by the PPP. The PPP, we all know, is crooked in nature and they cannot be trusted. So why would we accept the PPP putting together an organization to represent Black people? And listen, one of the big reasons they have to try to do such a thing is because of their record in the international, scene, that they've always been marginalizing and ill-treating and treating Black people without dignity. Listen, this government is seeking to dismiss us as a people and to dismiss our history. And we are just not going to sit here and allow them to do that. Because listen, without us, there is no Guyana. Without us, there is no emancipation. So everybody's is now, enjoying, you understand me, what we would have created for them, because it is the sweat and blood of our ancestors, the Coffees, the Amsterdams. We talk of Forbes Barnum as a visionary, but before Forbes Barnum, there were other visionaries. Okay? These people were visionaries. And listen, Coffee had to have had a vision, Mark, and Dr. David Hines and Darren, of what freedom looks like. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wayne Caesar there. Let's head straight over to Dr. David Hines. What an insult. They have a convict like Kwame McCoy, who is notorious throughout the country, has no good reputation. I don't know the others, other than a couple maybe soup drinkers, that the PPP decided that they are going to put and give possibly millions upon millions of dollars to say that they are representing the interests of African Guyanese. What an insult, Dr. David Hines. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's amazing how people hang themselves. Because last year, Coffee 250 came out with its theme of an emerging apartheid state. And the government went heels over head. They threatened to lock us up. They argued that there are no apartheid laws in Guyana, so there are no apartheid state. And they've continued for the last year to spin whenever the word apartheid is used. Yet, their attitude to African Guyanese comes straight out of the apartheid playbook. Apartheid is the name that was used in South Africa. In America, they use the term segregation. In the Caribbean, we use the term colonialism. What apartheid means is apart. People living apart, and the law and the policy treating them as separate. What the Americans call separate but equal. So apartheid is a generic term. No. Coming to this organization, one of the hallmarks of South African separation was the creation of parallel Black organizations and leaders. And one remembers in 1970, they passed the law pushing Black people into what they call homelands, Bantustans. And it means Black people are living there. They were subject to laws that the rest of South Africa were not subjected to. But more importantly, they imposed their African leaders on these homelands, these homelands. They picked their African leaders and imposed them. And the PPP is doing exactly the same thing in Guyana. This organization is the one that they want to be the national organization, but they're going around in Black communities, getting 2 or 3 people and giving them money and using that as a means of creating footholds in the Black community. This thing about alternative leaders to the genuine leaders is something that was used in South Africa, is something that was used during Jim Crow, United States. Remember, Booker T. Washington was being used by the government of the United States as a kind of alternative to Du Bois and Garvey. Later on in the 1970s, we had this group under the Nixon administration called the Black Republicans, Black capitalists. You know, those things could not be sustained because these people are not leaders. They're not taking people with them. They're individuals. They're individuals. And so they will get resources as individuals. They're not able to steer those resources to the Black community because they're not representative of the Black community. So it's a tactic that cannot be sustained. The whole idea is to starve the Black community, alienate them, tell them that the coalition didn't do nothing for them, and that your best bet is to accept your second-class citizenry. Let your bucket down. We're going to give you some crumbs. And at least the crumbs are more than you got from the coalition. This is the message to them. And so therefore, let your bucket down. Stay there. We're going to get these influential people in your community. They are going to be your role models. Remember they said, African Guyanese didn't have role models. So they are now creating these role models. Andrew Douglas, or whatever the fellow name, he comes home, a re-migrant, and he discovers that Black people have no representation. He's Columbus. He discovers, Columbus discovered the Americas when people were living in the Americas. Andrew Douglas is a modern day Columbus. He just discovered that Black people have no representation. And he is now going to accept some gifts from the PPP to go out there and to catch some Black people and to put them in some cages and put on red jerseys on them and hold them up and said, this is the example Black people should be. So it's part of the plan of domination, and the way you dominate people is to make them believe they're nothing. And so you come with your little crumbs, makes them something. And in order to do that, you have to criminalize the authentic leaders. You have to make them useless. You have to say all kinds of things about them. You have to call them lumpen this. You have to call them that. You have to call them this. In order to delegitimize them in the eyes of their own people. However, we have news to them. We saw you coming a long time ago. And we have to put up barricades against you. You are the ones who will end up in the cages, and the PPP walking around with you and saying, look at these fools. Look at these fools.
Indeed, 57 minutes after 9 o'clock. Dr. David Hines is with us this evening. Wayne Caesar is with us, and also out in Guyana, attorney Darren Wade is with us as well, talking about the plight of all Guyanese, but more so the disrespect of African Guyanese by these folks in the installed PPP regime, insulting persons of African descent by putting a bunch of discredited individuals, convicts and so forth, to head some so-called African organization to represent African people. But let me say this publicly, as I've said before, and I know Wayne has said it, and a couple of you out there have said it as well, that they are not representing these people. The likes of a Kwame McCoy and the others mentioned are not representing my interest, neither my family's interest, neither my friends' interest, and I'm sure by extension, majority of the Guyanese of African descent interest at all. Dr. Hines, you mentioned earlier that in the 60s, off of the Nixon administration, the Black Republicans, as you know, they were standing up and reminding fellow Black folks the party that actually brought an end to slavery was actually the Republican Party. And back then, majority of Black folks in America were actually supporting the Republican Party. But it wasn't until after maybe sometime during the 40s or the 50s that majority of Black people switched and are now supporting the Democratic Party. But maybe at some other occasion, you being a historian, we can touch on that as well. The shift from the Republicans to the Democrats. And the question is the Democrats doing enough on a lot of issues? That's another issue that we can discuss. Mr. Wayne, go ahead, sir. Over the weekend, you're saying something, but your mic is muted. Please, Mr. Wade.
My apologies. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Before
sir.
we move on to that issue, I want to touch on something that Brother Hines mentioned.
Sure,
because
sir.
And I thank him, Brother Hines. I believe he's an excellent Guyanese. He's an excellent role model. He's an excellent resource person. And we need more persons like him who can make meaningful contribution. I must say I'm pleased and I'm more informed that he has brought to the fore, he has brought to the front the importance of history and of history repeating itself. So whenever the narrative is being written, whenever we are engaging the international community, we could tap into him as a resource personnel. And when we put in the narrative and telling the story, we make reference to history.
Attorney Wade, you have a valid point, and I'm sorry to cut into you that because that touched right home to me. That oftentimes we don't get the input, especially from an international level, especially here in the U.S. The likes of a David Hines who can sit around the table to really talk and demonstrate what is happening there in Guyana. And that is absent at almost every level. We're seeing that every day right here in the United States. And some of those who are the usual suspect can stop what they're doing and ensure that persons with real and credible experiences and so forth can get that opportunity to talk on behalf of those Guyanese back home or Guyanese in the diaspora as well. Thank you so much for saying that. Dr. David Hines is just one who should be utilized more often. Again, continue there, Attorney at Law Wade.
Yes. So whenever we are putting together the narrative to inform the regional and international community, we certainly will need to make reference to these instances that you would have mentioned. I must also say that what I realized at the United Nations with civil society and the various governments, our struggle, it is not just Guyana, it's common struggle. So the thing that we face in Guyana, other countries are facing it. And they oftentimes, and they have raised it, whenever they are defending persons or they're defending migrants, they run to them. And one of the things persons are saying, the government are prosecuting them as traffickers. And that is international, and that is serious. It just shows the state. And once you have evil actors in the state, they will do all kind of things. All kind of things to get their way. So thank you, Brother Hines. And I believe Brother Ben Scott, you were going to ask me a question in relation to
thank you so much. I'm glad that you've mentioned that. I'll take you back all the way to Kingley over the weekend, and I want you to briefly touch on how important is brother, and I know you are connected to him, a father to the nation, of course, Kojo McPherson, His Excellency Kojo McPherson. But before you respond to that, Attorney, can we just have an input from Wayne Caesar about the plight of African Guyanese and how do we get out of this situation, Mr. Caesar?
Well, listen, Mark, I feel like if our ancestors would have put forth a platform, they would have given us the ideas, and I think that we need to go back to basics as a people. We need to understand that, we have gotten a little bit lackadaisical. We go there and we spend our monies and we don't control the way we spend our monies and who it is that we're spending our monies, with and giving our monies to. We have to have more control of that. I think we're somewhat lawless in that area, and we need to clean it up. I think people look at us, listen, because when you look across the entire world, I'm not just talking about Guyana. When you look across the entire sphere of the world, Black people are the largest consumers around the world. Whether it's vehicles, whether it's clothing, whether it's Nike sneakers, we are the consumers here. And we have got to start pulling back. You know why? Because we are not being treated like we, are the largest consumers in the world. We are treated like second-class people across, that's Dr. Hines said in Guyana, second-class citizens, But yet we have, Roy B. Pat and all these different stores and Movie Tongue and all these places. Listen, Mark, I am not the type of person who does call, for people to boycott businesses. But we cannot continue in this posture because these same businesses continues to support the government and they're collecting our people's money. So we have to start getting smart. We got to start doing things within our communities. We've got to start spending money within our communities and, our local business people. Yes, the prices may be a little bit more than the mass producer, being the Indians, because they control most of the markets. And we see that because they're the owners of the large businesses. And you see, like, good example, Mr. Kojo McPherson, he would have saved and he would have purchased. And as he continued to purchase, he continued to evolve, and his wealth continued to grow. Why? Because he used his knowledge. He used his knowledge and he executed. So that's what we as a people, Mark, have to start doing. Look, I'll give a quick example. A friend of mine, he's in the States and he would have banked $1 million in Guyana. And I don't know, he couldn't give me exact timing as to when he checked, with the bank on his money. But he's presently in Guyana. And when he went to the bank, Mark, there was no money there for him. They said the money was finished. It was all charged in fees, Mark. Now, if you know that somebody's from the diaspora and they're going to bank, you know that they're not going to be back for a while. As a bank, in a third world country, we still have to call Guyana a third world country, Mark, based on how our people are living. I cannot say Guyana is a second world or first world country because that's not reflected, you understand me, in how our people are living. Our people continue to live in poverty, although we are one of the larger oil producing nations in the world. Right?
All right.
This guy was coming out back to the diaspora. The bank could have told him, hey, look, there's going to be some fees. We're not going to charge you any fees, though. We're going to use your money and we're going to invest it. That way, we're going to gain an interest, and that interest could cover your fees. Instead of that, they would have used up all the man's money. Come on, Mark. That's where our country is, man. It's very, very corrupt, and we need to clean things up. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Wayne Caesar. Need to clean things up. Country corrupt indeed from top to level. We see it every single day. The corruption is it's not going away. It's getting worse and worse every single day. The discrimination and so forth. Let's head over to Darren Wade. Spoke at Kingley Village concerning his relative, because this is Darren Wade's bloodline. Talk to us, Mr. Wade, adding to what Dr. Hines said, Mr. Caesar said, and some comments in the audience as well about the contributions made by Kojo McPherson.
Let me say, Mark, yes, you're correct. I am from the bloodline of Kojo McPherson. That is my family heritage. Kojo McPherson was a pioneer in the village movement of Guyana, or the main figure, matter of fact, in the village movement of Guyana. There's this thing, and I'm not our friends in Victoria is the forest village. But let me say this. Litchfield village, that was bought by Kojo McPherson. Litchfield was transported on the 12th of November, 1840. Victoria was transported somewhere around 1854. So when we were a village, Victoria was still a plantation. It was still a plantation. As an attorney at law, a property in our conveyancing system, property is only transferred upon transport, upon the passing of transport. So the argument or what we've been taught in school at Victoria is the forest village is incorrect. It is incorrect. It is not supported by history nor law. I want to put that for the record. Litchfield was transported on the 12th of November, 1840. And even if there was an agreement of sale probably before, and that is what justified the Victoria, the forest village, it would not have been the forest village, probably the forest transaction. And Kojo McPherson and several other persons from Litchfield freed enslaved Africans, pulled their resources together, and they bought Litchfield. Similarly, some 20-something plus years after, Kojo McPherson and others bought Kingley, about 2 or 3 villages up from Litchfield. Kingley is what is in contention. And the PPP government is bullying the descendants of Kojo McPherson for the supporters to occupy the lands of free enslaved Africans. Mr. Nandalal, my learned senior, is at the forefront of this. He visits Kingley. There was one recording years ago when he was there by Sadhu. There was a meeting at Sadhu House. I remember Mr. Cooper, who God bless the dead, was the commander then. There was a recording whereby, and I know Mr. Nandalan's voice, Mr. Nandalan's voice, saying, go and break up the fence that Lincoln Lewis have at the back there. Tonight, I want to call on my learned friend, Mr. Nandalal, my learned senior, to take your hands off of Kingley. Allow Kingley to be for Mr. Kojo McPherson and his descendants. Take your hands off of Kingley, sir. And the struggle continues. So one of my cousins was charged and is before the court. Direct political involvement. Mr. Akins like to say he's from Oaktown and he's from Berbice, but Mr. Akins could say whether or not Mr. Nandla called him, or whether or not he said 5 truckloads of policemen to harass people in Berbice. Mr. Akins must say that, whether or not that is true. And Mr. Akins must be a cousin from Oaktown. Sometimes, who knows? He may also be a descendant of Kojo McPherson.
I see no resemblance there, but continue. I see no.
I'm just saying. No. You see, we West Coast Bobbies, we intermingle.
Look at the honorable Kojo McPherson and take a look. Seriously, take a look at Aiken. Come on.
I hear you.
Aiken is about 4 feet tall. Kojo McPherson is almost 6'5". But continue though. There's no resemblance there. But I'm glad at the effort that you guys are making in ensuring that you spread the word about Kojo McPherson and his contributions. You spoke about the fact that Kingley was purchased way before Victoria. These are good.
No, not Kingley, Litchfield. Litchfield Village.
Yeah. Dr. David Hines, what's going through your mind, please, as we look at the time? But go right ahead. Where do we go from here?
We have to intensify the struggle. We have come this far by the very force of our own struggle. That if we did not resist, the government may have gotten off by pretending to be democratic. See, the more we resist, the more undemocratic the government has to become. You know, when you're an installed regime, you don't enjoy the legitimacy of at least half the population. And so in order to control that half of the population, you've got to move into authoritarian policies, authoritarian practices. And the more they resist you, the more they expose you, the more authoritarian you become. So a logical extension of regime change is undemocratic government. And we have seen that before our very eyes. Authoritarianism cannot be sustained in the 21st century, not by any stretch of the imagination. This government is having what you call short-term feel-good because the external forces are feeling their way. Their objective is to protect their investments. In 2020, they made a decision to install the PPP. Without, as usual, external people don't really think about the internal dynamics, without really examining the internal dynamics. Now, the internal dynamics that arises out of a government that functions on regime change is that the country is permanently unstable. Now, you just look at what's happening on our roadways. That's a classic example of a country devoid of the rule of law. Nobody follows the law on the roadways. We are losing lives every single day. No country can develop, especially 1 or 3/4 million people. If you're losing people on the roadway, 2, 3 people every day, 4 or 5 people every week. So you look at that, look at the level of crime. Look at the level of crime, all right? A society that has to spend its time politically oppressing people cannot pay attention to basic things that the government must do. And one of the basic functions of government is to look after the welfare of its people. That is to defend its people against crime, to defend its people against lawlessness on the highways, etc. So we're not even getting into politics yet. Part of the logical extension of regime change is a lawless society. I mean, you just have to be on the roadways in this country to see the level of lawlessness and the inability of the government to deal with it, because the government is spending resources spying on political opponents, oppressing political opponents, and so the coercive arm of the state is not being used to uphold the rule of law. And that is a serious development in our country. The government is busy spending money on infrastructure, 4-lane highways. Well, if you see what cars do on 1-lane highways, meaning the streets in villages, the speed, the recklessness that going on there, and you are now going to put them on a 4-lane highway, passing through villages where all the people and children, I'm wondering how old people and children are going to go across those 4-lane highways, because there's no respect for the law. And a government that cannot do basic things in a society is a government that is in crisis and a government that cannot be sustained.
Well said, Dr. David Hines there. Always a pleasure to have you. Very informative programs you usually have at your end, and I urge people to ensure that they head over to Politics 101 and listen to Dr. David Hines. Before we go, I will just sit back and allow Wayne Caesar to ask you, Dr. Hines, one question, and Attorney at Law Darren Wade, one question. And I'll just sit back and listen to you guys respond to whatever he has in mind to ask. One question each, though. But go ahead, Mr. Caesar.
Sure, Mark. So it's the same question I'm going to pose to Darren. So, Darren, you could listen in also. Counsel, you can listen in. So, Dr. Hines, Mark is putting in the work. You're putting in the work. You have Rickford, you have Norman, you have Sheriff Duncan, you have Kedaki, and you have the coalition. We're all working here as one cohesive unit. And we all know the adversary here. But what I would have noticed is that, and I keep bringing this up over and over, is that we're about 2 years out from elections, and there has been no movement from the Guyana Election Commission, the government, and Dr. Hines, I'm going to take it a little bit outside of the realm of the government. I'll go there to the ABC countries, no one is, saying anything about a new voters list, especially after the debacle of the 2020 elections. You had a country, and the country still is very, very separated, very divided right now. And that is one of the main issues. And I feel that it's going to be a huge issue because we're coming up on elections so rapidly. And, there's even talk of biometrics. Biometrics is something that will take some time. And, if we're 2 years out now, biometrics should have started last week. I want your take, and I want Mr. Wade's take on this issue.
Well, listen, 2 things happened in Guyana over the last 3 years. One is the coming of oil and the movement of Guyana from a poor society to theoretically a petrol state. A petrol state that has access to resources that no other government has had in post-colonial Guyana. That is significant. that it's huge. It means that the state itself is being transformed because the capacity of the state to control the society has really quadrupled. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, we mentioned regime change. Regime change leads to unaccountable government because what it means is that the normal checks and balances in the society are gone. And let me just take the police and the army. They are usually a check on any government that's getting out of hand. What the install regime has done is that it has been able to contain the police and the army at the top. And it allows the members at the bottom to do what they like. So they're contained. So that check and balance has been removed. The PPP no longer has to wonder what will the army and police do. That is gone. All right? The external forces are they are protecting their investments, and they are not going to shift their allegiance until they have a reason to do so. So the checks and balances from the externals are gone, although the externals have signaled to the government that they are unhappy with the way they're governing the country. But they are not going to move against that government until they have reason to do so. The government, in turn, has been sucking up to the externals, giving the externals leeway to make more money, not to be regulated, and so on. And that is a dynamic that you don't break so easily. So the externals are gone. The official opposition has been rendered asunder, like any official opposition after regime change. After regime change, opposition is usually in disarray. So the disarray we see in the PNC is not unexpected. That happens whenever you have a massive regime change, as you did. All right. So the opposition, because it is in disarray, cannot provide the kind of checks and balances that a normal opposition would provide. So the society has to throw up other forms of opposition. And shows like this then become forms of resistance. And the government recognizes that. That is why it now is not just threatening to lock up Mark and me and so on and so forth. It is moving towards locking up people who come on these shows and write innocent comments. Understand, because this is where the opposition is coming from. I have to say that we are not going to get a new voters list as part of a regular system operating in a regular way. We are going to get a new voters list through a political solution. It means that the PPP has to be brought to the table. And the way you bring the PPP to the table is that you have to have a confluence of forces. The opposition, the official opposition, has to begin to think strategically. It has to realize that you cannot oppose this government in the same way you opposed the government 10 years ago. It is a transformed situation. And you have to think this thing through, and you have to be strategic. And one of the things that this opposition is not doing, it is not making the linkage between its objective and the objective of its supporters, because it is acting non-racially, while the PPP is governing racially. You see, and the main opposition is still acting non-racially. That is, it is not treating its supporters as a particular group in the society undergoing a particular kind of oppression. And so you have to have a synergy between leadership and followership. You don't have. The supporters of the opposition have a sense of their racial oppression. They have a sense of their racial marginalization. Their leadership in the major party has that sense, but is not acting on that. And so there's no synergy between leadership and followership. And if you're going to bring the PPP to the table, that is the one area that is open to you. And that is to develop a synergy with your people and begin to represent their frustrations. It is then that they are going to come behind you. If the opposition goes on the road today and asks 10,000 people to come on the street, they're not going to get it, because there is no synergy between the people and their leadership. You have to have that synergy. And if you have that synergy, then you have the people behind you. You then use them as your leverage to bring people on the streets. Now, am I saying something that never happened? No. Desmond Hoyt, after the 1997 election, was able to put thousands of people on the street every single day. He stepped out of the formal system and utilized its people. And then the PPP came to the table, and then he used that as leverage. They gave up 2 years of their tenure. They agreed to constitutional reform. They agreed to go to arbitration for the public service workers, just by the synergy between the political leadership. We were able to get those outcomes. And I think this opposition, including myself, we have to find a way to begin to think strategically and to begin to think about new ways, taking into consideration what is going on in the society today. The capacity of the state is overbearing, and we don't realize it because we are acting in real time. But the capacity of the state then should drive the opposition to develop new capacities. And I think that's where we are found wanting. Ultimately, they're not going to pass laws bringing in new voters in the PPP. Why? They're benefiting from it. They're not going to do that. You have to force them to come to the table and get a political solution. That takes strategizing. It is a reason that the PPP is hurrying to call an election, because they recognize that the official opposition has really not thought out how to oppose in this new era and how to win in this new era.
Thank you. Well said, Dr. David Hines. It all stems from leadership and courage as well, because now is the time to confront these vagabonds in the PPP. They only know one language, and that is confrontation. And you can't sit by and beg them to take you to the table. You have to force them. I don't know. But just before the question that Mr. Wayne Caesar posed to you, Dr. Hines, as well as Attorney at Law Wade, let me just quickly say that there's a breaking news story. Presidential candidate in Ecuador assassinated at a campaign rally. Assassinated. Ecuadorian presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio, right, was shot and killed. Forgive me for pronunciation of the last name there, but was shot and killed tonight by an unidentified gunman out there in Ecuador. I just thought I'd bring that breaking news story to you guys. Mr. Darren Wade, the same question Mr. Wayne Caesar posed.
I have listened to Dr. David Hines and also you to the end with a few words, and I have concurred, and I have nothing to add to those statements. I believe it was eloquently said, and also I'm looking at the time, and I respectfully beg at this point to take my leave.
Thank you so much.
It was a great night being here, and everything that was said, I think so.
It appears as though you read from the same script at Kingley, because you went up there and you said, look, I have nothing more to add to all of these speakers. Absolutely nothing more to add. And tonight it's just the same thing. You have nothing more to add. But Mr. Wade, as always, we welcome and we appreciate the fact that you took time out from your busy schedule to be with us. Thank you, sir. And
Thank you
continue.
very much. And good night to you all and your viewers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Darren Wade, this leaves us now to let's first have the closing remarks by Mr. Wayne Caesar, and then we'll have a brief closing remarks by Dr. David Hines as well. Over to you, Mr. Caesar.
Yeah, Mark, I you know, and I thank Dr. Hines for the compliments that he would have bestowed upon me. But Dr. Hines, I don't think that you can be a bigger fan of me than I am of you, sir. I really admire your work, and there's so many attributes that you bring to the table, you know, that I really, really appreciate and like the fact that you're an academic amongst so many other things. You're a freedom fighter. In my opinion, you're a hero in Guyana. And in many, many years to come, your name will still be out there. Your name will still be calling. And, you know, it was just a pleasure sharing this platform with you tonight. Mark, my closing remarks.
Oh, I thought that was your closing remarks. I was going to say thank you so much, Wayne, but go ahead with your closing.
No, Mark, I can close with that. If you'll accept it. No, you're not. He's not going to accept it.
No, okay. I agree with you on that, and Dr. David Hines and your contributions indeed. But Mr. Caesar, go right ahead, sir, with your closing remarks.
Yeah. One thing I want to say amongst our leaders, all our leaders, Mark, you included, Dr. Hines included, you know, Mr. Norton, Mr. Lincoln Lewis. Listen, we have to come together as one unit. We have to set aside our egos, okay? The Guyanese people are depending on all their leaders out there to get them out of this trap, this entrapment that they've been in for some 23 years. And then they get a breather for 5 years, and then they're back, you know, in the same box for 3 years now, three more years, Mark. And we are one of the largest oil producing nations, and the people cannot seem to benefit anything from it. They have been here all the time. They've been waiting, Mark, all the time. You know, it's time. It's time for Guyanese to, you know, start enjoying their country, enjoying what their ancestors would have handed over to them, and not have external forces coming into our country and just seeking, you know, to reap the benefits. You know, Guyanese need to reap the benefits, you know, equally, all Guyanese equally, just like this installed government and their inner core of individuals are reaping. So I call on the Guyanese people to stay focused, and I call on our leaders to lead from the front. We don't listen. And I say this specifically to the PNC party. We have a leader. Let's rally behind the leader. There's going to be a Congress. If you want a new leader, vote for a new leader. But even if you don't respect the person that is in the leadership position, please respect the position. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wayne Caesar there, public accountant. Lots of people in Brooklyn asking whether Wayne is going to be back sometime over the weekend. We're not sure as yet. We'll let you guys know that. But looking at the time, I just want to thank all of you, beautiful listeners and contributors there in the inbox section. But Dr. David Hines, briefly, sir, your closing remarks. Leave some sort of hope for the people, please.
Yeah, there is hope, you know, out of our challenges, and they're tremendous challenges. And, you know, the PNC is trying, you know, in the circumstances where life is not hospitable to opposition witnessing. The PNC is trying, but I think if we have more unity on the opposition side, then that opens up new pathways for us. Yes, we're not a monolith. We have different ways of doing the same thing, but there must be a minimum set of things that as an opposition we can rally around. Look, as someone who's been in opposition politics, during the Burnham time, there was the Committee on Defense of Democracy. There was the Citizens Committee. There were the 4 unions, then the 6 unions, then FITOG. There was the PCD. You cannot fight a government like this as a single party. You can always be crushed. You have to put aside your differences and hold to that common thing. And if our common objective is to democratize the society, and we agree that the PPP is a danger to that real democratization, and they have to be removed, that is enough to bring us together and for us to rally together. And guess what? If people can wake up and look up and see Aubrey Norton and Royce-Dale Ford and Amanza Walton and perhaps David Hines and Patterson or whoever from there, if they can see 5, 6 of us together, it gives them the hope that you are talking about. And that is why tomorrow at Buxton, we have invited our big team because we want to be an example to the opposition. Bring all the tendencies. Bring the Royce-Dale Ford from one faction of the PNC. Bring a Nigel Hughes who comes out of another faction of the opposition. Bring Simona Brooms. Bring a David Hines. You're bringing all the tendencies together there. And what we are hoping to do tomorrow night is to show the opposition what a united opposition can do in terms of transforming the landscape and then making it easier for us to perform our functions as an opposition.
Dr. Hines, I've noticed a comment there in the comment section. What time this event you guys have in Buxton, what time does it start?
6:30 tomorrow evening.
6:30. And once we have time, Wayne is usually the guy that's responsible, along with Lemon, for ensuring we have these programs. So Wayne is smiling. So once we have time, we will definitely carry it live right here on 107.1 FM right here. And you never know, at some point in time, whoever the presidential candidate is for the grand coalition, we're still waiting to see who that person is. I think it is still fresh for people to just rush out there and start marketing themselves and selling themselves as that. We have a bigger problem to fix before we even get to that. Yeah. Dr. Hines, thank you so much for your time. Mr. Caesar, thank you also so much for your time. We will be back tomorrow, same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Thank you, Mark. Good night to our listeners and viewers. God bless Guyana.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, and here it is that we pull the curtains down. Again, I want to thank all of you for staying up and being here with us as usual. We will be back tomorrow, same place, same time. We just, sorry about that. We just got a message coming in from Lemon. Lemon is saying that he has enjoyed the program as we're reading it here. Thank you so much, Lemon. And thanks for a great job, GT Root Girl, and every one of you. Yushiv, Elzar, Mikkel, what a name. Jackie, Bear, how are you? Eon, Harry, and all the crew. Every single one of you out there. God bless you. So long. See you tomorrow. Again, same place, same time. Tata.
So this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.